Well, I thought it was pretty interesting so far.
It was, thank you. I agree.
We can have peace in the Holy Land. Do you believe that?
I do.
How can we do that?
I think this is a propitious time for it. Well, one thing is we've got into a crisis stage where Israel, maybe for the first time in generic terms or broad terms, have to decide, do I want one nation or two nations? And that's a seminal question. If you can't create a two-state solution, then you wind up with a one-state solution, and that's the way Israel is going now. And a lot of very top leaders in Israel, including Barak, and also including Omar, and including Ms. Livni, all realize that this is a trend that must be reversed. But the way things are going now, with 280,000 settlers in Palestine, it's becoming increasingly unlikely that the Palestinians can have a viable nation of their own alongside Israel, and so the two-state solution is in danger.
So what do you want George Mitchell, who leaves, I think, tonight?
He does.
Have you talked to him?
Yeah, I talked to him twice since he was chosen.
As the envoy to the Middle East.
And I'm thankful that he was chosen. I think he's the best possible American who could be chosen. Yes.
And what do you want him to do when he goes to the Middle East? What do you hope he can accomplish?
On this trip, I think it will primarily be, or most exclusively be, a fact-finding mission, because he hasn't been deeply involved in the Middle East for the last 2 or 3 years. And I think he's just going to size up the situation in Israel, in Palestine, in Egypt, in Jordan, and in Saudi Arabia. He told me he's not going to Syria on this trip, but I hope that in the future he will go to Syria, because Syria has to play a crucial role. That he may not go to Lebanon. I think Lebanon is also crucial for the future. But I think this time he'll just be educating himself on the latest developments in the region.
He should meet with Hamas leaders?
I hope so. Maybe, I don't think on this trip it will be possible, but he's going to have to. Anybody that wants to bring peace to the Mideast has got to involve Hamas, because Hamas now governs 1.5 million Palestinians in Gaza, what's left of Gaza, and they also have an unidentifiable degree of support in the West Bank, where the other 2.5 million Palestinians live. So I don't think you could ignore Hamas. And every leader in the Middle East, in the Arab world and so forth, and Hamas and Fatah all agree that there has to be a unity government so the Palestinians can negotiate as a unit cohesively and also enforce any agreement that's reached with Israel.
So we should be encouraging them. And should we be doing what to encourage them, Hamas, for example, not to be lobbing rockets into Israel?
Hamas, I read in the Wall Street Journal this morning that Hamas has offered a 1-year ceasefire, with the only provision being that Israel open up the border and let food and water and medicine and fuel come in. That's the only provision. And that was...
Do you believe that Hamas would do that?
Absolutely.
That in fact they open up the border and allow food and other things come in?
Sure.
And financial resources as well?
The financial resources come in primarily from Fatah to their 88,000 people in Gaza who are still part of Fatah and are employed by them.
Which lost the election essentially to Hamas.
They lost the election in January of 2006. But do I believe that Hamas can enforce it? Yes.
Yeah, they can enforce the ceasefire. In other words, and therefore, if Hamas wants to stop the shelling of Israel, which led to this war, according to the Israelis, you tell me if you don't believe that. In other words, why did the Israelis invade Gaza?
I know what happened because I was there.
Tell me what happened.
Well, Hamas was lobbing rockets. My wife and I went to Sederot, a little village kind of northeast of Gaza, and we saw where the rockets had been falling. And in that year, between 2007 in July and June of 2008, one Israeli was killed by the rockets. But the rockets aggravated people, and it scared people who were living in this little village of 20,000 people. 3,000 citizens had moved out, and the streets were empty, the playgrounds were empty, and so forth. It was a very bad thing. So I condemned that as an act of terrorism and called on the Hamas to quit lobbing the rockets or permitting them to be lobbed. I met then with the mayor and a large group.
Why were they doing it?
Because in their, I'm not speaking for them.
I understand.
In their statement, I met with the Hamas leaders from Gaza first. They came out to Cairo to meet with me. They told me the reason they were lobbing the rockets was to bring international attention to the fact that they were starving to death, that the Israelis were not permitting food and water and fuel and medicine to come into them. And they had to publicize their plight. And they knew that nobody was getting killed. In the entire 12 months, one Israeli was killed. But at the same time, on an average, 49 Palestinians were killed every month.